Welcome back to another episode of How to Increase Your Income and Get More Freedom from Your Business. On this episode, I have Matthew Gottschall, and he is a co-owner and CFO, and wanted to bring him on with over 8 years of experience of helping run a business as a co-owner as well as a CFO, and he's played many roles as well in the corporate world and has worn many hats in the corporate world as well. But Matt, I really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your entrepreneurial insights with us today. Just wanted to start off with if you want to just give us a quick background on your background as well as how you got into entrepreneurship.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be talking to you today. Let's see. I was born in Southern California. I grew up in Orange County, which was a really interesting place to grow up. I was totally surrounded by people who had made it big in the business world. It was still an up-and-coming area in the country at that time, but people were moving there after making great successes with their companies or making significant amounts of money. So I grew up around a lot of self-made people and just saw that as part of my everyday life. A lot of my friends' parents were that way, and a lot of my parents' friends were that way. And so I had this feeling that anything was possible with hard work and dedication. So I grew up over there and worked pretty hard in school and went to a private Catholic high school, which was rigorous, pretty similar to a Jesuit program or something like that. I actually went through International Baccalaureate, if you're familiar with that. Got a degree through a program that's based in Belgium to have skills on par with the European system. Took my college career over to the University of Colorado in Boulder, where I double majored in accounting and finance and Mandarin Chinese, and did some time in China on a study abroad. And through a twists and turns of the next few years of my early 20s, I wound up going back there for school and getting a graduate degree in accounting. So I have a master's degree in accounting, got my CPA license when I was 26 or so, and started in public accounting. At the time, it was a small regional firm. It had about 700 people, CPAs, all in the Colorado Mountain region. And through my work there, I got recruited to work for an entrepreneurial startup run by Scott Beck called Gloo. Scott has a long history of being a serial entrepreneur. And so I was looking for opportunities to get into entrepreneurship at that time, and wasn't quite ready to go out on my own and do things, but being able to hitch my wagon to somebody who had a lot of success. He was one of the key builders of the Blockbuster company, and he also purchased Boston Chicken and rebranded it as Boston Market. Inside of that company, he started Einstein Bagels. And through his later successes, he had a hand in Home Advisor, which was acquired by Angie's List. It's now just Angie. Mm-hmm. And several other things that he's been involved in. And so Gloo was his latest entrepreneurial venture. So I got in here and had the chance to not only do accounting and finance, but also to work on business development and operations and developing scale, and really got to see a lot of different parts of the business up close and be involved in key decision making. Through that time, I started a couple of businesses on my own. One was a real estate development company where I raised capital to buy and build some multifamily real estate, and started a physical therapy clinic with my wife called A New You Physical Therapy, and have grown that from working in our basement to having a commercial office to having 2 commercial offices and employees and people working for us. Now, that's a very brief introduction to what I've been doing. I'm extremely busy. I've got 3 kids going on 4. And I'm firing on all cylinders.
That's awesome. Well, congrats. That's some awesome experience. I didn't know about the background on the employer that you have now. What have been some of your biggest key learnings from him?
One of the things Scott has been really, really good at working with me on learning is how to be influential. When you are in an executive type situation, or you're in a large company or organization, there's ideas coming from all over the place, some good, some not as good. There's people of all walks of life. They have different experiences, different sets of skills and knowledge, and really understanding how to control my emotions and control my responses to how we interface with those people as a leader was one of the key takeaways, because being influential in an organization, it's a very delicate and complicated skill that nobody's really born with. It's something you have to learn. And so when you're trying to navigate your way through a multi-100-person org structure, and there's a lot of difference of opinion and competitions for power and decision authority, gaining that influence is actually much harder than you might think.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, that's super interesting. So you've grown anew to a much larger size. I've known doctors in the past, and I think some of their biggest challenges is that they're solopreneurs. They're working pretty much by themselves. They have maybe an office assistant, but very rarely are they able to recruit other doctors that end up working on their team. Can you tell us about you guys' process and how important was it to be able to recruit other doctors to the practice?
Sure. So my wife was the primary solopreneur at the time. We actually started the company when she was ready to take maternity leave for her first kid. And throughout that break that she had there, we talked about her career and whether she wanted to go back and work in an employment setting. And she had already started taking on some patients from home and seeing people just out of our house. And we really just started it from scratch that way. We actually took a weekend. We decided, hey, we want to do this. And so we took a weekend and we rented a little one-room cabin with a wood stove up in Estes Park, Colorado. It's a cute little town if you've never been there. And we just went up in the middle of winter and we hunkered down and we sat there with our 2-month-old baby and we wrote out the business plan and we picked the name and we got the domain and we hired a branding agency in New York City to help us with some graphics, and we generated letterhead and we built a website and got a system for her to track her patients and do all the billing. And you fast forward that, her reputation actually grew to be so in such high demand as a practitioner that by the time we were going to have our second child, she couldn't handle the volume anymore. And we needed to have some people to come on to work with us to take some of the patient caseload, because we didn't want to lose all of those patients by her taking time off, but we also didn't want her to just push through and be postpartum and still working in the business. So we started looking at some of her network. She had already made connections with other doctors that have a similar practice. And we just asked them, hey, would you be willing to take on some of our patients? And we started with them as an independent contractor. And it grew from there. We decided, hey, this is working out. So started putting more effort into marketing, putting more effort into systematizing our process, documenting what we do, and growing it so that we could actually keep not only Amanda, my wife, full, but the other doctors full as well. And that led to needing more and needing more and needing more. And so here in the next couple months, we will be hiring. We've already hired and our 5th will be starting. So it'll be 5 total in our group. And it's basically grown through organic methods, like always providing a consistently high quality of service, making sure that all of our doctors are highly qualified, and focusing on those soft skills that create conversions from a first visit to visits.
Awesome. Yeah, I was checking you guys out online and it looks like you guys have a ton of 5-star reviews. So that's awesome. Can you talk about, like, have you guys systematized your client experience and how do you maintain giving that 5-star experience?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, because in physical therapy in particular, but I think in any high touch business where you're providing a hands-on service, whether it's massage or a barber or something that you're interacting with the client face to face, you need to allow people to be themselves. So you don't want to sterilize and sanitize the client experience down to something that's consistent every time and that it feels like they're just reading a script. But you also make sure that the approach and that the care regimen is consistent. And we've had our bumps in the road. We've had people give us feedback saying, hey, the therapist did way too much talking and didn't actually do a lot of hands-on work. And so over the years, what we've done is we've just set standards that we document and train, and then we can continuously monitor through seeking feedback, both automated through a software platform that we use for our clinic management, and also by calling the patients. We call the patients out of the blue that see all the therapists in the practice, and we ask them for feedback, and we get a lot of insight that way. People are willing to talk and talk about their experience, and not to suggest for a minute that it's all bad, but it is very insightful to understand where we can improve. So for us, I think our number one focus on quality and consistency is really how much hands-on care and what type of hands-on care the patient is getting. Second, it's asking for consent. In our practice, a lot of people don't want you to manipulate their body or move them in a particular way or touch them without explicit permission. So making sure that you're not just going forward and doing the things. We have to balance the explanation. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's why. Is that okay with you? And those are the top 2 pieces in our quality that I know
of. Okay. That's awesome. That's one thing that I did back in my mortgage business is we literally started calling every client after closing. Hey, anything that we could have done better? How did it go for you? And just really trying to get that feedback. One of the mentors that I got to is also send surveys to people that you didn't become a client. So that was one unique thing that I had started to do of just, hey, what could we have done to earn your business? But that's awesome that you guys have that 5-star experience and are collecting those reviews and getting feedback and having standards too, I think is so important of here's the level that we operate. And like you said, it's such a delicate balance, especially in that industry of making people feel seen, right? Versus sometimes you go into a doctor's office and you feel like just a cog in the wheel and they're in and out and there isn't that feeling of care. So that's cool that you guys have been able to adapt to that.
We do also call the people who don't schedule, and we make sure that we understand why didn't you schedule, and they'll tell us why. And it's not a lost cause. It's an opportunity to close, to make an offer and bring them back in. And people are hugely appreciative of that. Actually, when you demonstrate that you care about the client experience, even if it's a bad first experience, people will place more value on the fact that you care what they think than getting it right the very first time.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes your most loyal clients can be ones that might have had some turbulence in the beginning. So that's awesome that you pointed that out. If you think about your entrepreneurial career, once you and your wife opened up this practice, and obviously you've been with your current employer and seen the transitions that he's made, what do you feel like has been one of the most challenging times in your entrepreneurial career?
Well, honestly, I don't know that there's any particular time in the past that's been the most challenging, because the challenges just keep on coming. I keep thinking that I'll get to a place where I can relax and let things run on autopilot. If I just get a little bit more documentation, if I just get a few more people in the right positions, just do a little bit more training, maybe I hire a consultant or I get a better system. The truth is that those are the things that are the work and often happen in response to either a desire to grow or a desire to fix a problem. And what I've actually found is that the path itself is an arduous path. It is every single day I have to get up and I don't know what I'm going to hit with. And so there are definitely a lot of times where it's been more intense in my past. And I would actually say going through undergraduate and having a little bit of a journey of self-discovery, trying to figure out like, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? Trying to break my mind free of how society was imposing on me this notion when I was 15, 16, 17, that I had to know exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I kept finding myself, I'm 20, I'm 22, I'm 24. I don't know. I didn't know. And I actually struggled thinking that I would never figure it out, or that I had to figure it out. I had to come to the answer. That was a particularly difficult time, just feeling like everything that was going on in my actual life was in conflict with what people seem to think I should be going through. That was tough. But I mean, as an entrepreneur, especially, I have full-time employment, and then I've got 2 businesses in totally different industries where I am the final line of defense. It's a constant challenge. I mean, there are good days and there are bad days, but they keep
Yeah, like the analogy that you're either growing or you're dying. And as an entrepreneur, it seems like you're either growing or you're dying. It'd be nice to just be able to put it in cruise control and let it go. But same owning multiple businesses, it's been interesting, like the curveballs that I get thrown at me on a daily basis. It's just like, all right, here comes another curveball. It's just a day in the life of an entrepreneur for sure. So I can completely understand and appreciate that every day is a challenge. So in regards to that, how do you maintain a positive mindset?
Yeah, great question. Let me think about that for a second here. My mindset is based first and foremost, and this might sound a little bit silly, but I try to make sure that my baseline emotion doesn't mean that I'm always happy, but I always take care of myself. And in my deepest heart, I'm trying to make sure that I'm feeling joy and that there's happiness emanating from me. And that I'm grateful for the fact that I even get to live here. I get to live at all and have this chance. And that's what I have spent many years cultivating within myself, and just ensuring that when everything is falling apart and it seems hard, I can still return to that place of gratitude, because that really gives you a platform to handle a lot of other things. The other thing is that I just continuously remind myself that every problem has a solution and every problem is temporary. I balance the desire to aggressively attack every problem with the understanding that not everything is going to get figured out right away. There's seems to be just this certain amount of time that has to pass, and you can let things simmer. If it's not optimized, if it's not going very well, if somebody hasn't made a decision that impacts you or whatever it is, sometimes everything just works out over time, and you have to let that time pass and just be comfortable sitting in the uncertainty. And I think that's probably a really important skill for anybody who wants to get into entrepreneurship or even work for a company that's trying to do something for the first time. You need to be comfortable with uncertainty and just be sure that you're making the right choices day to day and moment to moment, and that you're not being rash or rushing through those things, because you may not know how it's going to turn out. But if you are careful and you analyze and you just sit quietly with the problems and you make sure that you make the right next decision, you say the next right response in your email or whatever it is, that time things can kind of get worked out. And I actually have a lot of confidence and faith in that process now. And it gives me confidence that it's going to work out in the long run, because I've seen it proven over many, many years.
Awesome. That's so cool. I think that really resonates with me, because I think there was many years in my entrepreneurial journey is that I had very little gratitude. I think it was like always trying to get to that next ring or rung, and like, just this crazy amount of wanting to grow, that the gratitude wasn't a piece of my life that I later on learned. And I wish I'd have learned that 10 years earlier. And the other thing that you said was joy. And I had a one word mantra in 2022 and 2023. And that one word mantra was enjoy. And just like you said, trying to have the joy, like while we're here, is a huge piece of maintaining that positive mindset. Are there any daily rituals or practices that you do to kind of keep that positive mindset?
I'll answer that with yes and no. I don't have routinized things, like I don't have a speech or a mantra that I say, or I don't have a routine that I go to. What I've really sort of come to understand is that it matters more moment to moment than it really does 30 minutes every morning. I would say that in any given day, I probably would describe my state of mind as in a continuous meditation. I'm interacting in the real world, but I'm also constantly watching my thoughts, watching my feelings, my emotions, and understanding how I'm reacting to what's going on in my life. And I'm sort of an observer of myself. So I'm existing as myself, and I'm observing myself at the same time, almost like there were two parts of my brain. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't stop. If I let it, I actually don't know how to turn it off now, but I think that in the beginning, developing a practice where you can sit down and actually meditate, focus on your breath, focus on your thoughts, get them under control, like that's super valuable. I did that for many years with teachers and guides, and, both spiritual and psychological training, but eventually it becomes part of your moment to moment life, and you don't lose control of yourself. And it doesn't mean that I'm always 100% even keeled. There's a time and place for anger. There's a time and place for sadness, and letting those things be felt and not trying to suppress them is also an important thing to balance and get right. But my mindfulness practice is continuous.
That's really cool that you've gotten to that level. I know, like I said, just early on, I didn't have any of that mindfulness practice and emotional fitness, and it made things so much more difficult. And it was like the bigger things got, the worse the negative emotions got. It wasn't like entrepreneurship actually wasn't taking me in the right direction. When I thought, hey, the bigger my business gets, the better it'll be. It was like, no, the bigger my business gets, the more anxiety I have, the more frustration. There's a lot more things that go awry the bigger your business gets. So with you having, two businesses and a full-time job and 3 kids and one on the way, like how do you manage kind of that work-life balance?
So I don't mean this in the wrong way, but there's no such thing. I have one life. I am working and living all the time. My thoughts go up and down and in and out through all the different things that I'm living through. And sometimes I'm focused and present with my family, and sometimes I'm working on the business, and they don't always have a clear division. I might be with them on the weekend and I have to go step and take a phone call. And then there might be other times during the weekday where I don't have a lot of meetings or specific tasks that I have to get done right away, and I'll stay home and I'll just, be with them. So I try not to prioritize my professional career over time with my kids, especially because I know that time is extremely limited. My children are 6, 4, and 2, and I really don't want to miss this time in their life. So I make a point to always prioritize being there and being present with them. But then when I'm at work, I procrastinate sometimes, but I try to be like really on fire. I use systems, I manage through people. I focus on things until they're done. I make sure that they're done, and I get a lot done. I set them up and I knock them down when I'm at work. And that could be 6 hours, it could be 14 hours, but it's not a clear dividing line where I'm always here at this time, I'm always there at that time. I think work-life balance is really just making sure that you're always giving the appropriate amount of attention to everything that needs it right now.
That's awesome. I've heard many of my mentors say kind of work-life balance is an illusion, right? It's just one of those things that it's like, it comes back down to focus. It's like, all right, right now I'm going to focus on my kids. Right now, I'm going to focus on my work. If you can maintain that focus. I know that you guys at Anu, you mentioned that you guys have a very specific niche. What is the niche that you guys have at Anu?
Yeah, Anu Physical Therapy focuses on pelvic floor physical therapy. And the pelvic floor is a group of muscles, and sorry if there's any pelvic PTs out there. I am not a PT. I don't purport to know much about this space, but it's a group of muscles that is in and around your pelvis, your pelvic region, and it holds your organs in place. And it controls a lot of your major functions that when they're not working properly can lead to some pretty uncomfortable things, such as incontinence, or like, you're leaking. You could have chronic constipation. And what we actually specifically treat is a high number of women that are going through pregnancy and postpartum, because that's the time when those parts of your body get especially disrupted, stretched, moved around. And so we provide care for moms that are going through pregnancy and they want to have a successful recovery and postpartum, to make sure that everything is great and they don't deal with lifelong issues. Now, this also affects men. It can affect men, and it can be present in people who have never had kids. And it can also show up, 30 years down the road or persist that long. And so we treat the population outside of the pregnancy and postpartum as well, but that's just a big area of focus for us.
That's awesome. And how beneficial is having a very specific niche been to growing your business?
It's extremely beneficial. We have found, especially in the physical therapy world, that there are countless orthopedic clinics, sports injury rehab. The big hospital systems have rehab clinics where they employ full-time physical therapists. And so we're not really interested in a race to the bottom, which is the price and the speed and the churn, like sort of like the mill of work that some of those models put you through. So we specialize in what we do because it's an up and coming field. So it's growing a lot, but people are also willing to pay cash and just work outside of the insurance model because some of these issues are so important to having a high quality of life.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of my business coaches, he was huge on, he used to call it your hedgehog. You have to have a niche, have to have something. If everybody's, quacking like a duck, you need to be sounding like a different animal. That was his kind of analogy. And that always stuck with me, to have something that somebody can carry you by and have that niche is really, really important. So how would you say that you guys as company right now, are there some ways that you guys are trying to innovate and think differently?
Yeah, we're looking at all kinds of things. So first and foremost, we're always ensuring that our clinical side of our practice is really solid. We want to make sure we've got enough practitioners to see the patient demand, and we always want to grow that patient demand. So hiring new doctors is a really big activity for us. And then in order of operations, we need space, and then doctors, and then patients. And they can't really happen in any other order. So we need a place for them to work, then we need to get the doctors, and then we got to get the patients to fill it. So we kind of go in that order. This year, opened our second brand new office and more than doubled our capacity. And that is now causing the second question, which is how do we fill that space with doctors who are revenue generating? And then as soon as we hire the doctors, we have to make sure we have the patients. And so we're in that cycle all the time. Now, on top of that, we're looking at ways to increase the revenue per patient. So we're putting all of our doctors recently went through a special course to install a device called a pessary, which is, I'll spare you the details, but it helps women. And that is an additional service that we can provide. It's very unique for physical therapists to provide it, but due to our specialization, we can do that rather than an OBGYN. And that can increase our per visit revenue by $125 per visit, which is substantial. In addition to that, we're looking into product sales and ways to become sort of a hub for knowledge. So this hub idea sort of spans multiple things. It's marketing for the clinic. So if we can host courses and be sort of a knowledge center and a place where people can get information and resources, it leads to more patient conversions into the clinic. It also helps us develop a network where we can invite other practitioners in related fields, whether it's doulas, OBs, it might be nutritionists, yoga instructors. We invite them all to events that we host or we go to their events, and we make sure that we're providing a platform for all of those people to also market their business through our patient population. And what that does is it helps us develop a very strong referral network, because our number one source of patients is the 100 or 200 doctors that are out there in the Colorado's Front Range. And as we grow, we'll continue expanding this influence. But if all of them are seeing their own patient populations, maybe 40 or 50 a week, and once or twice a day, they think of us for their patient, they refer it in. So we want to have really close relationships. We want to be well respected, and we want to have mutual shared patients with that big network.
Yeah, you alluded to a few things. I always talk to business owners about balancing this teeter-totter between operations and sales, right? It's like, all right, we need more leads. And then now, okay, now we need more fulfillment. Now we need more leads. And it's just like this ever, balancing teeter-totter. And it will go on until, as long as you have a business, you're kind of balancing that teeter-totter. You talked about an awesome thing that I always, when I'm doing consulting, of talking to business owners about, like, what events are you hosting? So that's awesome. And my actual follow-up question was, what has been the best sales and marketing strategy that has been most instrumental on your business? You mentioned also the referral network that you're getting through the other doctors. Was that something that was proactive? So can you kind of talk about what was the most effective sales and marketing strategy that you guys have had?
Well, by far, it's been that network development. And that actually is maybe a lot less scary than people think. We're not cold calling doctors' offices and asking to come to their location and bringing lunch or donuts or something like that. That's sort of like what you might see in the TV or movies when there's just a salesman trying to bang down the door. We actually invite people to go for a hike. Like, hey, would you want to go for a walk? Do you want to meet for coffee? But we try to keep it in a much more personal setting and not a very salesy setting, because relationship is much more important than a transaction. That's been the most important sales technique for us, which leads to patients, is to develop relationships with those doctors. Not just, hey, I want you to know that I'm out here. Here's my price list. It's, hey, can I get to know you? And we use some of the most common things that you would ever know. I mean, if you're a business owner, you probably know 7 habits of highly successful people. You probably know how to win friends and influence people. It's like, you want those people to have an opportunity to tell you about them. It's not, I want to talk about me. It's, I want you to talk about you. And that actually is a really effective tool. When they come away from the conversation having done 75% of the talking, they have a positive impression of you. And then they think that you're great because they feel known and that they're feeling cared for. And we're not fooling people. Like, we actually do hang out with these people. We have them over for barbecues and they're actually our friends. But taking that extra time and making it like a very one-on-one sort of deeper connection than just business is our number one tool. Beyond that, our website, we're continuously working on our website, making sure that we're search engine optimized, making sure that we've got great Google profile, great photos, great copy, and that the website does the job of selling people, because some of them are just looking for an issue or a solution to an issue and they don't know how it's going to be solved. And the website needs to be there so that Google can present the issue or present the solution to the issue by surfacing our content. People who might be searching, oh, how do I cure incontinence? Or how do I, what do I need to do for a successful vaginal delivery, for example? We want to show up as answers to those questions. So once they get to our website, then the website needs to do the job of closing the deal. And the last piece that I'll mention is that we do have a high touch sales process. I would say a minority of our new business just goes on the website and books. A lot of them want to talk to us. And so rather than a call center or rather than an outsourced phone answering service, we have a doctor answer the phone. It is a doctor. Wow. They have a direct access to talk to a physical therapist on the phone through a discovery call. So if they're not sure that we can treat their issue, if they're not sure that they can be helped by our issue, they can fill out a little form on our website and we'll call them. We try to call them within 2 hours. And getting that call not from a sales development rep, but from the person who's getting treatment is really, really different.
Wow, that's awesome. And you hit so many golden nuggets. I hope people rewatch that like 5 times, because I think, like you said, relationship development is so huge. When I'm doing consulting, we're talking about like how to get past the coffee and how to actually become friends. What are some common interests that you guys have, and start doing those common interests? There's a book, Ultimate Sales Machine, and he was like, the holy grail is having dinner at each other's home. I would say the holy grail is traveling with your referral partners. That is the holy grail. But I think you hit the nail on the head of, you're not just trying to bring by donuts and show a price list. You're actually creating a real relationship. And then that's awesome with the SEO. I think SEO works in some industries and not all industries, but I think that you guys are so specified. I could see that working really, really well, and having a great website. And then having a doctor be available. Holy crap. Like, it's so odd for that to be able to happen, to actually get them on the phone. I know that when I was scheduling a procedure, it was like a rigmarole. trying to call like 4 or 5 different companies. And finally, one was just like transparent, easy to work with. And it was such a differentiator. So that's awesome that you guys have that process where they can talk with a doctor that's so unique. So that's awesome. As we're wrapping up here, this show is dedicated to a younger entrepreneur that's looking to increase their income and they're looking to get more freedom for their business. What kind of final thoughts and words of wisdom and advice would you have for that younger entrepreneur?
Yeah, this question comes up a lot, and I'll have to say it, and then I'll caveat that, and that's don't give up. Now, the only time that you ever lose is when you quit. Perseverance is the number one characteristic that I can say that's gotten me through. I'd never quit, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how frustrating, no matter how bad things seem to be going. If you quit, you lose. So don't quit. Let everything be an opportunity. If you need to take a break, take a break, take a week off, come back, re-examine what you're doing, and try something else. Now, I don't want that to mean be stubborn. It doesn't mean be stubborn. You need to be open to changing, and you need to understand that your ideas may not always be the best ideas. Your first thought may not always be the best thought. And not everything has to be amazing and mind-blowing and sexy and attractive to be the right decision either. Be open to things being mundane. Be open to them taking work, taking time, having a process, writing the document. Be open to those things. It's not overnight success and I'm flashy with my Ferrari. You got to put in the work. And through all of that, perseverance is key, and just being willing to do the grind. And trust me, if you knock on enough doors, I always say this when I travel, but if you ask enough people and offer enough money, you get anything you want. And I say that when I travel because I've been in Thailand and I've been like, yeah, I want to go scuba diving, but like those big tourist boats don't look good. I ask enough people and I figure out how much money they want. We're on a private boat with a private scuba diver the next day. And it's a speedboat and we're going all over the place by ourselves. And it's like, you got to be willing to go through the process to get to the yes. You ask the people and they'll tell you where to go. They'll point you in the right direction. So that's one thing that I think you'll probably hear from a lot of people is be willing to hear no before you hear yes. But it's just like when you lose something, right? Where do you find something that you lost? It's in the last place you looked. It's always in the last place you looked, obviously, because that's where you found it. If you are trying to build a business, you're going to get a yes after you get no's. If you don't get a yes the first time, okay, so what? Ask another person. Don't get down. Don't get discouraged. You might have to go through 20, 30, 40, 100 people in order to get to a yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that perseverance is just so important. I can't tell you how many times I was sitting there as a mortgage loan officer going, I should be making way more money than I'm making right now. And just being completely frustrated and going, maybe I should just give up and go work for a bank. And the people just come walking in. And every time I got close, I mean, I interviewed with Chase and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, oh, I can't do it. Like I was ready to kind of quit and I just couldn't give up and then retire to just sitting behind a desk and just waiting for people to walk in to Chase Bank to help them with their loans. But that persistence and then, yeah, being able to pivot, right? If you're, Tony Robbins has a saying is if you're running east to catch a sunset, that's probably not going to work. So you need to be observant. So it's like you want to keep progressing and keep making, if it's not working, adapt and change and move and keep adapting and keep progressing, and not giving up. So I love that you were saying not to just bang your head against the wall in one way, maybe look to adapt and change and pivot. Awesome, man. Well, so many nuggets in today's time with you. So I really appreciate the time that you gave us today. And yeah, thanks so much.
Happy to do it. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.